Per usual, everything on this channel is for educational purposes only and is not intended as financial advice. It is Wednesday. Let's take a look at some alt charts. And really, I've got nothing to say because everything is either below the cloud or at the cloud on anything that I care to trade or analyze. So we'll look at a few charts here, but I won't talk about DATs. Those all look pretty bad right here, as you'd expect if the alt or BTC doesn't look any good. It's not like a DAT is going to randomly, magically be performing better most of the time. And equities have done really well in certain pockets, certain sectors. Commodities, metals have done extremely well. And that's where most of the speculative activity is. So if gold doesn't settle down, we can't expect BTC to do well. If gold is up 3% every day on less volatility, for most people, that's enough. Gold and BTC never move together for the most part. I'm still optimistic for the cycle when gold looks like it does because we've never seen gold break out like this late in the cycle. It's fair to root for gold to slow down because then Bitcoin could catch up. We do have a little bit of a bear div here on the daily. It's certainly parabolic at this point, as is silver, but divs can last for weeks and months. So that isn't to say the top is here. This could keep going. I just don't have any really TA justification beyond here. Maybe there's some yearly pivots higher. Maybe there's some other measured moves higher that you could think about. But the big stuff, we are there. You know, we can check the cup and handle. And even that level was like 3,500. If you're taking the 2011 high to the 2016 low, the fib zone there, we're past it. So there's really not much left unless we're talking about more fibs like the 2618 or something. Those are of course going to be higher, but the high probability stuff, we are through it. But until gold slows down, I don't think anything's going to happen with BTC and therefore alts. And we can talk about QT ending versus QE versus rates. All that stuff is true and coming down the pipe potentially, especially with the QE conversation. That's not been talked about yet, but it could take a lot of time and a lot of drawdown on alts before that happens, especially if BTC continues to look as angry as it does. Best case here is metals slow down, equities that are roofing slow down, S&P just holds flat and doesn't get angry, the Qs hold flat and don't get angry, Mag 7 doesn't get angry, IWM, zombie companies outperform, and then alts could potentially do well. But there's a lot of daylight between all those things happening and alts doing well. So the first step is gold slowing down. When you look at BTC here, this late in the cycle from the bottom, over 1,000 days now, 1,050 days from the bottom, it's not where you'd want this to look if you thought the cycle was going to continue from this point. We should not be seeing the weakness that we're seeing in October if the cycle is healthy, right? A healthy cycle by now would be easily into all-time highs. That's what we've seen. We're below the 20-week moving average. We're flirting with being below the cloud. Those are both not places you want to be. Yes, we have recovered from that posture several times since the bottom. Maybe this is just one of those times. It's possible, but again, this late in the cycle, it's hard to be as optimistic because everybody's looking at it. Now, you have people saying, people were betting on October and that's why this failed. People have been talking about that ever since the cycles existed, okay? As somebody who's been here since 2013, I can tell you, it's always been the same. People have always been talking about Q2, Q4 being bullish, XYZ relative to halving. So to say this year people are talking about it more or less is false to me. The bottom line is if we are correlating with equities on the downside but not the upside, that's a problem. If gold and other speculative assets, not that gold is a speculative asset, but gold has all the momentum right now. If that stuff is getting dollars and attention, it's going to be very, very hard for BTC to move higher and certainly alts to move higher. Now, we could on the BTC front swim down here on the multi-year pitchfork below the midpoint. That would be sub 100K. This is for the cycle isn't over crowd. We could swim down there and survive, but I think you're going to have time to make that decision if we should continue to move higher. For example, if we break below 100 into the 90s or something, I think you'll have plenty of time to figure it out, is my argument. So who cares where we're at in the cycle, if the cycle exists or doesn't. We look bad today. We've looked bad for a little while after that breakout that failed. Now we looked great, right? And that's the thing with crypto. This could change on a dime. This could change a week from now. On low time frames, if we're above 116, I feel a lot better about the rest of the year. But the longer we stay down here in 110 land, we're just asking for a move lower. And if alts start to break down even below their wicks, which for most of these is going to be very hard, but if they do, then what, right? So it certainly feels like downside volatility has a higher percentage chance sitting here today than the upside, but that changes at 116. So for me, that's the level where I start to feel better. But I would not trade to the long side with leverage here or options, NFA obviously, but you want to do that when you've got momentum on your side. This is, in case you weren't sure, this is what momentum looks like. This is not what positive momentum looks like. We still have a potential head and shoulders here on dominance. This could still form an inverted or head and shoulders and break down. We could still get alt season. It's just, like I said, even before the move on alts on Friday, this could take into 2026 still. And this is a 3-day chart. This could take a lot of time. And you, of course, have the inverted head and shoulders potential still on Total 2 over BTC. All this stuff could still happen. It's just a timing conversation. And when do you feel is appropriate to size this correctly? Saying whether you think this is over or not isn't really valuable to me. Having levels where you think, okay, this is where I like alts, this is where I don't, that's a lot more valuable to me. So if we can survive on BTC into 2026 or into the end of the year, I think alts do better. But looking at this chart and looking at how alts look across the board, there is no momentum here. This is sideways. A lot of these are flirting with bearish moves. This is Total 2. And you can apply the macro backdrop and you can say XYZ reason, right? But ultimately price pays. And if the charts look like this, at least for today, that is not a bullish outlook. The most bullish, just so I'm clear, because in case this reverses on me, everyone's going to say, "Oh my God, Josh, you were so bearish at the bottom." So what I'm talking about here on BTC, if this makes a W instead of a head and shoulders, this is kind of a head and shoulders fractal at the moment, but if this pulls up and makes a W, then you get to 116. Then we can do whatever we want. I feel a lot better up there. But how this looks on the hourly, on the 4-hour, we clearly have somebody just selling. So this is not a good look. And we are on a knife's edge here at 110, 111, 112. Definitely the key level. ETH BTC also probably needs some time here. Refusing to get in the weekly cloud. I like this better. It's just a better trade if you can get the edge-to-edge triggering at 03 rather than 036. So fine, right? This isn't about some value judgment on ETH or BTC. I think most alts don't have value. So that's that, right? That's just my opinion, man. But as a trade setup, what I'd want here is something closer to the Kijun. On ETH, what is there to say? Back in the cloud, been in the cloud for a little while. Yes, we had a decent bounce, but this whole zone is a no trade zone. And, I get people asking me, what about an edge to edge from here to there, from there to here? The first time you close into the cloud after months, weeks, days of being below the cloud, that is when I love the edge to edge trade. I love the idea. I take those trades. The second, third, fourth time, no, I don't assume anything. Here, this is all just chop from 3,300 to 4,200 is just a huge chop zone. If we can curl up above 42 into 44 into 45 above 48, then I feel a lot better from a risk reward perspective. But this is in limbo. It's on the river Styx. It's paddling slowly in any direction, just doing a bunch of nothing. That's it. That's all there is to say for ETH. Sol, same thing. In the cloud. No trade. Next chart, right? Would you rather trade this and worry about, oh man, is this going to break 150? Am I going to be able to get out? Maybe this is above 210. Maybe I'll get back in. Is it worth spending the mental energy and money thinking about all that, or just finding a chart with momentum? So it's a little early for me on ETH, on Sol, to think about it in a big way. And then the further down the stack you go, I only have a few charts, but the further down we go, it doesn't look any better. Any setups that looked decent have failed to the downside. Any chart that was sort of teetering at the cloud is certainly below the cloud now, XRP being one of them. Last week, Wednesday, pretty much in every chart, I kept going through saying, okay, higher high, I like it at a higher high. We did not get a higher high, we got a lower low instead. So from a trading trend perspective, there was nothing here. Even on BNB, certainly feels a little late at this point in the game. It's essentially 2x from July. Not something I generally trade or look at, but good for you if you caught it. You know, there's a few examples of this that have done well out of 2,000. Most of them look like Ripple or Solana, where they've tried to go up and failed, or they've chopped around and gone lower. Tron's another one. Doesn't look any better there. These are just the top 10, right? Doge, this is pretty much how most of the charts look to me relative to the cloud. You were setting up for something great, tried to stay above the cloud, and now you're not. Nothing to do here. Just nothing to do, which is unfortunate because something like even LTC, it was breaking up. It was making highs, and it got smacked down. ADA, another one. What is there to do here? Nothing. There's nothing to do. Until you have a div or a pattern or you're approaching some cloud level, to me, there's absolutely nothing to do. Link, someone asked me in the comments a couple days ago, why don't I ever talk about Link? Well, I certainly talked about it in July and August when you had a reason, in my opinion, to talk about it. Since then, there's been nothing to say. It's gone from in the cloud to below the cloud. That's it. Now, just like BTC, all this stuff could double you out, happy days, etc. But we're not there yet. We're certainly not there yet. This is hype below the cloud. So if you see anything that's above the cloud, I like it a lot from a trade perspective, as long as it doesn't look like BNB, which would be a little late. You know, if you look like silver and gold at this point, to me, you probably missed the boat. At least for me. You know, I could be way off base, but for me, that's not something I like to get in. And because I know I'm going to get asked about it in the comments, let's just bring it up. We'll bring up Zcash here. Does this look like an entry to me? No. Next chart, right? It just looks late. We can apply some fundamental reason why we think Zcash has the best privacy, which it doesn't. Why it has the best blockchain, which it doesn't. Why it exists at all, which it shouldn't. Fine, right? That's different than whatever I'm looking at here. We're looking at technicals. Not for me. So it is pretty bleak out there in altcoin land. And I don't have any good news until BTC is back above 116. That's all I got for this one. Give me a like, dislike, comment, share, subscribe. Let me know what I missed on the altcoin side. I'm sure there's a micro cap gem that we can bring up. And happy trading.